everyone. My name's Martin Hamilton and I'm Director of Leeds Civic Trust. And I'm delighted to see so many of you here today for the official opening of the Bear Pit. This is a project, as I was saying earlier, that I've been connected with when I was a councillor in Headingley, and then when I took over from Kevin Grady as director. So it's been something that has been a thread throughout most of my adult life, actually. So it's really pleased from a personal point of view to be here today to see this structure opened. We have a number of short speeches, and then we'll be inviting everyone up to look into the Bear Pit, to have some refreshments, and there are some tours a bit later on which I'll talk about towards the end. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Alex Sobel, who is the local MP. Alex.
Thank you, Mark. Is that working?
No.
No.
Swap.
What about now? No?
No.
Now?
I wonder if that's the guy.
Technical difficulties. Hello, I'm Alex Sobel, and I'm the local MP. I was born locally, but my family moved away when I was quite young to Sheffield. And as a young child, I spent many happy hours in Sheffield Botanical Gardens, which never shut and is still there. If you go to Sheffield, they have a very similar bear pit in Sheffield. When I came to Leeds to come to university, I moved into Lupton Flats in Headingley, and on my very first day here I decided to have a wander around Headingley, and I wandered down Chapel Lane, down the wonderful cobbled Chapel Lane with a wall which was the northern boundary of the Botanical Garden. Then I walked down Cardigan Road. It just seems like yesterday, although it was definitely not yesterday. And I came upon this structure and I wondered, what is that? What could that possibly be? The following year I moved just opposite here into Newport Gardens, and I found out this was the bear pit, like the bear pit we had in the Botanical Gardens in Sheffield. And over the years I realised that actually standing here, this view is wonderful, because you can just imagine looking across the road at the gardens, the three large private gardens here of Cumberland Court and the two houses, what the Botanical Gardens might have looked like before they built Cardigan Road, before they built the train line and the station, and what it would have looked like for the 18 short years the Botanical Gardens existed. And it was established by, and I think he had a great name, Dr. Disney Thorpe. You know, nowadays Disney conjures up quite different thoughts in terms of leisure, but in Leeds in 1840, Disney meant the Botanical Gardens. So we have our own Disney, we have our own Disney heritage right here. And I think it was really interesting that we had a bear pit and a bear, because that was the largest animal they could afford, because the Botanical Gardens struggled for a number of reasons, particularly the fact that it was shut on Sunday, and that was the only day then that people had off work. But in addition to the brown bear, which apparently was quite a placid creature, there was a raccoon, alligator, guinea pigs, an owl, a peacock and two parrots. It was quite lively down here during that period. So, you know, it's still quite lively, and actually I'm sure I've seen a raccoon, alligator, guinea pigs, an owl, a peacock and two parrots walking down Otley Road recently, but probably in costume rather than reality. But we can talk about the Otley Road another time. But I'm really pleased that the Civic Trust has done this sterling work. I know it's been many years in preparation. And I had a meeting with Martin about a year ago. We talked about the information, how it should look, and the fact that it should be something that engages the public. And I think looking at it now today, completed, this is absolutely fantastic. I mean, an absolutely fantastic community resource, along with the little pocket park just at the top here, the Cardigan Trail, which was also part of the Botanical Garden. So we managed to restore two small parts of Botanical Gardens back to public use locally. And I think that's what we need to think about Headingley, is about restoring Headingley back to public use, public amenity, and improving the area for the community and for families. And I'm really pleased to have been working with Martin and the Civic Trust on this, and I give them absolute credit. They're a wonderful organisation. Thank you to Leeds Civic Trust, and thank you to all of you for coming today.
Thank you, Alex. That was really a really nice speech, and I think, you know, again, your connections go back a fair way, and it is something that I think people drive down this road, walk down this road, and whenever we've been here doing the work and the builders have been here, people stop and say, "What's this?" So it is a curiosity. So it's nice that we're now finally able to tell the story, really. As I mentioned, I was a local councillor here many years ago, and I'm delighted to be able to pass on the microphone to Councillor Abdul Hanan, one of the current councillors, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Martin. Can I first of all start off by saying, when I first saw this structure, I initially thought it was a castle, and it got me thinking, what is a castle doing in the middle of Headingley? And why is it so small? Who actually lived here? Was it just one resident? And what was going on? Then the wonderful internet came along, and I did my research, and I concluded, as Alex said, that it was a bear pit. And that got me thinking, what is a bear doing in Headingley? They looked into it further, and yes, there was a zoo here, and it was an attraction to bring people to Headingley across the city. But obviously that didn't work out. As a local councillor, I believe in heritage and history, and I think we need to look at ways of retaining that. People that know that Royal Park School, we retain that as the Royal Park Gardens now, and it's a multi-use purpose facility that everybody can access. And I'm truly grateful to Leeds Civic Trust in ensuring that we retain this wonderful heritage in the middle of Headingley. I would also look at people using this facility and looking after it. I think that's where the strength is in the community, is making sure that our heritage is retained and is looked after by the community. So once again, a big, massive thank you to Civic Trust, ensuring that we can retain this massive, true heritage that is in Headingley. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You mentioned Royal Park Gardens, and of course this was known as the Royal Gardens. So we now have the Royal Gardens and the Royal Park Gardens. There can't be many places that can boast two Royal Gardens outside of London. Yeah. Okay. The next speaker is Phil Ward. Phil Ward was up until, have you got a day to go? Yeah, you've got a day to go. Phil is the head of conservation at Leeds City Council. Monday is his last day in his position before he goes off and does other things. But I think Phil has had a long-standing connection with this structure, and I think Phil will say a few words about that. And clearly, as the head of conservation, an abiding interest in the heritage of the city. So I'll invite Phil to say a few words. Phil.
Thank you. Good afternoon, just, isn't it? When Martin rang me up to ask me to say a few words, I said, Martin, I want to make this personal. And just like the other speakers, I've had a very long relationship with this building. I was a student here in the last century, back in the 80s, and this street was part of my perambulation to keep warm. It was warmer outside than inside, and just like the other speakers, I looked at this and thought, what's that? That's such a curious building. You know, is it a castle from a lost race? And then I picked up a leaflet written by Janet Douglas. Anybody know Janet Douglas? Yes, yeah. I think she deserves a round of applause because I think I've had a number of epiphanies in my life, but that was one of them. That really got me into what I've been doing for the last nearly 40 years in Leeds. And I read the leaflet, and my perambulation widened a bit, and I found the wall. You can still see the wall of the zoological gardens. Anyway, 40 odd years later, I've been involved in this building. I remember standing here and looking at the mortar. We had several goals, didn't we, to get the mortar right. What my experience at Leeds has taught me is that I think we all have a personal take on historic buildings. They mean something different to everybody. This is a list of buildings. You can read the listing. It's very boring, but it is really boring. What I've realised that we all have a personal connections. The historic environment, as we call it, is something that we project our phobias, our fears, our dreams and our imaginations, I think. And Martin, if I can say one thing, we shouldn't have any bears, because I think that will answer the question. That will answer the question, what is this? It can be lots of things. I think there's an ambiguity, a tension that I really enjoy between official heritage and what we all see. We all see different things. So a bit of a postscript, if you like. I'm finishing my role on Monday. It's a terrible wrench, because I'm really invested in this place, and I will continue, I'm sure, in some shape or form. This building has been through a period of rejuvenation, and I'm hoping that similarly I will go through a similar process of rejuvenation. So here's to this building, here's to my future.
Thanks, Phil. That was wonderful. Well, Phil, as you say, it is your last day on Monday, and we thought that we had to use this occasion to mark it. So it's not just Phil talking about the Bear Pit, but it's also an opportunity, I guess, for the Leeds Civic Trust to thank Phil for all his work over the years on many projects, many buildings. So I've got a card here for Phil, which I'd like to present. And also just a small memento, which is something that Phil will be able to explain, but some of you may be familiar with the man who did this. Here you go, Phil. So this is one of the many diagrams that the civic architect John Thorpe created, and this particular one is one of Sovereign Square. But they're rather nice pictures, so we thought we'd get one framed. That's all right. Okay. Right, we're almost ready to do the ribbon cutting, but before we do, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Kevin Grady, my predecessor as Director of Leeds Civic Trust. This is a project that has, been a thread throughout Kevin's career at Leeds Civic Trust, and so I'm sure he's as delighted as I am that we're here today to open the Bear Pit and to appreciate its history. So, without further ado, Kevin Grady.
Thank you, Martin. I was asked to say something about the more recent history of the Bear Pit. Quite recently, I bumped into a former council member of Leeds Civic Trust, and he said to me, "Now, whatever happened to that building, that troublesome building that's been on every Leeds Civic Trust council agenda since 1966? Well, the troublesome building, of course, was the Bear Pit. Shortly after its foundation in 1965, the Civic Trust decided it wanted a project. It had lots of money in those days. It wanted a project, and there was this ruinous Bear Pit in Headingley, and they thought, what a great idea, let's buy it for only £128 and we'll renovate it and we'll show what a great organisation we were. Well, of course, they did start renovating it in 1966. It took 2 years to do it, and they returned it to wonderful condition. But already they realised that owning a bear pit that didn't really have any particular use, and which could be subject to vandalism, was really a problem, and it actually cost lots of money. So what were they going to do with it? Well, over the next 20 years the bear pit was maintained, but at the same time there was no real answer to what do you do with this romantic folly in the part of Headingley. Well, it was difficult, and when I became a director of the Civic Trust in 1987, I retired 7 years ago, and I did 30 years as director of the trust, and I thought, isn't it exciting? I've become master of the bear pit like Martin is now. But I immediately realised that the attitude of the council members of the Leeds Civic Trust was, this building has really become a terrible nuisance. what are we going to do with it? And my instruction was, see if I could offload it to somebody else, in particular Leeds City Council. Well, Leeds City Council weren't foolish enough to take on the responsibility for the building, and nor was anybody else. And at the same time, I thought, well, it is a wonderful historic part of Headingley, and the Trust should take on its responsibility and actually renovate it and find a use for it. But of course, we had very little money left by then. So, as time went on, in fact, there were a number of proposals for how to use this building, and in fact, one of them took place only 4 years before I became director, in about 1983, and Robin Matchell, who is over there in the right-hand corner to the right of me, came up with the scheme with various colleagues to turn the Bear Pit into an open-air theatre. And this was rather wonderful. The back part of the Bear Pit would be demolished and tiered seating would be put in. A tent would be put over the pit to be erected if it was raining, and this was a great idea. The only trouble was that Leeds City Council didn't think it was a great idea and said, when a planning application went in, they said, well, where are the toilets and where are people going to park? Well, of course, as we see today, you can get lots of people here without the need for parking on site. So that scheme went down the drain. So things went on a bit, and then more schemes came along during my period as director. So the first one was, in fact, the Trust didn't have any offices at that time. We were in a one-roomed office in Clarendon Road, and I had this brilliant idea that, talking to Robin, could we turn the Bear Pit into Leeds Civic Trust offices? And I had grand ideas and Robin produced a scheme to put a nice set of offices in an arc round the back of the Bear Pit, and there was going to be a bridge from them to this parapet, and I thought, isn't it going to be wonderful to be able to address the public and entertain people, and we drink martinis and things like this on here, and well, you know, it was a great idea. So you keep seeing, I'm imagining it now today as it would have been. Anyway, the point was that at that point we had the opportunity to buy our buildings in Wharf Street, and there was no doubt that a city centre location trumped the notion of being here, so our scheme didn't go ahead. But then in 1994 somebody came along, one of Robin's colleagues, and said he'd like to build an eco house here, and it would have been dug into the mound behind here, and that didn't get planning permission. And then somebody else came along 5 years later and said they'd like to build an eco house on the site, but that person disappeared and has never been seen again. So where he went to, I don't know. Then in 2004, Rush Bond, who owned the Corn Exchange amongst other buildings in Leeds, said, we can help you. How about if we build 8 flats at the back of the site? This was to give some surveillance to the site, and the garden of the Bear Pit would have been the garden of the flats, and that didn't happen because we were worried about, you know, would that respect the heritage context of the building? So really, there we were. However, the Trust became more affluent as time went on, and I managed to persuade Leeds Civic Trust Council members that actually what we should do is say, this is a wonderful folly, we should restore it, we've got the money to do it. And so in 2011 we decided that there were some enormous trees, you may remember, on the site of the Bear Pit, and they were undermining the structure, so we had those removed. And at that time, Graham Castle and Richard Voss, two very skilled people in the building and engineering profession, civil engineering that is, became members of our house committee, and we decided, yes, we would go and try and renovate the Bear Pit. And so a scheme began. Well, the trouble with schemes like that is that they do take time. It's very difficult to work out what to do. And so we progressed the scheme, and when I was about to retire, I was desperate that we should have this scheme completed. Could I have been director for the Civic Trust and not achieved the renovation of the Bear Pit? And but what happened, of course, was that we were almost on the brink of putting a scheme into effect. A heritage board was designed and was going to be put up, and then I retired, but then of course things like pandemics interfered, and getting planning permission was an issue and what have you. So in fact it has taken virtually 12 years, certainly 11 years from that point to get to this stage today. But I have to say, it's a wonderful scheme. Congratulations to Graham Castle and Richard Voss in particular, and to Martin and his colleagues for finally delivering what I was unable to deliver. And it is very splendid. And I have to say, when you look at the Bear Pit today, the skilled craftsmanship that has gone into it, the great thing is that, well, should just say, if it's not to be on the agenda of every council meeting for the next 50 years, we do have to find a use for the building. So that's Martin's challenge. But I think we can say that the Bear Pit today looks as magnificent, if not more magnificent, from when it was first built in 1841. And here we are, and doesn't it look wonderful, 184 years later. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. And yes, the challenge is to think about how we keep it in this fine state for the next 100 and whatever it was, 80 odd years, and ensure that people can enjoy it. And I'll be saying a couple of words right at the end about how we might do that. We're going to move to the ribbon cutting and also unveil the information board in a second. But just before we do that, I'd like to give my own thanks to Kevin for his persistence over many years. I'd like to thank the membership of Leeds Civic Trust, who've also been extremely supportive in lots of different ways in bringing this project to a completion. I'd like to thank the team within the office, many of whom are here today, who worked hard today to get this unveiling event together, and I think it is a wonderful occasion. So thank you to Jodie, Amy, and the rest of the team for their hard work. But above all, I'd like to thank Richard, and I'd like to thank Graham, who are both standing here today, because they've really driven this project forward once the Trust decided that it was something that it saw as its own project rather than a third party delivering a block of flats or whatever. These two gentlemen have really driven the project forward, and so I think they deserve a big round of applause. So we're going to walk down now to the information board. I'm going to invite Alex and Abdul to unveil the board, and then Richard will do the ribbon cutting, and maybe say a few words when you're down there, Richard. Okay. Yeah, the one or two balloons have survived. They've been popping over the course of the last hour or two, but we're finally here with some balloons in position. So Graham and Richard are going to do the ribbon cutting, but before we do that, I think Richard wants to say a few words.
Yeah, I feel that we're being asked to cut the ribbon, given the honour of this, really on behalf of many volunteer members of the Trust who helped look after this building for decades. As Kevin reminded me, I've only been involved since 2011. There's many here been involved rather longer than that, as you heard this morning. So I would like to thank Kevin and Martin for their support, guidance and encouragement in developing this project. But also that extends to trustees of the Civic Trust as well, and perhaps most importantly, Finance Committee in actually getting this project completed. Okay. Oh yes, sorry. Thanks for reminding me. the team that delivered this last year included a number of people I'd like to mention. Our architect, Christian Sanders, who I don't think is here this afternoon, originally worked on this well before I started working with Robin Matchett, who we mentioned earlier. Our engineer, Richard Smith, QS, Tony Yale, and our contractor, Ross Forward, who is here today. Thank you, Ross. Okay, very good.
Right. Are we doing a count? Let's do a count.
Do a countdown. When you're touching it, don't stop trying to look this paper as you're touching it, yeah? When you grab your way around, yeah.
Okay, let's do a count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So, final couple of words from me before we all walk up into the bear pit. As you know, this is part of this is the start of something, and we really want to know what people think we should be doing with the bear pit over the next few years, how we can use it. So, if you're interested, at the left bank, just down the road, between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock today, there's an opportunity to express your views. There's a consultation exercise going on. You can write down what you would like to see happen. There's also some crafts for children, so some really nice bear-related crafts. So that's something else you can do. And then, as I say, grab a soft drink in the through the gates here. There are some leaflets. There are a couple of tours. So if you've signed up for the tours and the talk that Graham will give on the bear pit, then they will happen shortly. If I look at my notes, at 1:15 and 2 o'clock. We'll be here till 3 o'clock when we'll close the bear pit for the day. This is the Trust's 60th anniversary year, and so we've got various things going on this year to celebrate that. So whether or not you're members of the Trust, if you follow us on social media, you'll hear about the various things that we're doing this year, which includes a 1960s bus tour, which is coming up, so that'll be exciting. We've got various other celebrations happening. Heritage Open Days, which is always a big event for the Trust. We coordinate that. We've also this year introduced a new membership for under 30s. So if you're under 30 and you're interested in the work of the Trust, you can join the Trust now for £15. And indeed anyone wanting to join the Trust, you're very welcome to do so. Go to our website and you can sign up there. But that's the end of the talking. Please do enjoy the bear pit. Thank you.